Hi, Teni Dicely here. If you've been enjoying these Dungeon Master Roundtable episodes, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and ring that bell to get notified when new videos go up. The topic you're about to watch today is just one of a few that were covered during a live-streamed episode on the Dicely DnD Twitch channel. The music you'll hear in this video was created by Tabletop Audio, and I'll let our guests introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Fred Wheeler. I run the How to D&D YouTube channel. I talk about Dungeons & Dragons, mostly 5e right now, and I do talk about other RPGs, and I'm the one who wrangles everybody into these things usually.
Hi, I'm Logan. I am one of the players in the Play Dicely D&D campaign, and off of Twitch and YouTube and stuff, I DM a home game that Denny used to be a part of.
I'm Jordan with Flutes Loot. My wife and I, Opal, do a YouTube channel for D&D variety topics, as well as our website, flutesloot.com. We kind of specialize in her doing lore and crafting magic items, especially magic item formulas. And I'm big into improv and crunchy numbers, as well as reviewing things. So between the two of us, we get quite the spread of content. Happy to be here.
The first topic I have for us tonight here, the Monster Manual, provides us with a variety of monsters, with pre-established lore. But for those who desire to make their D&D settings feel a bit more their own, they might, and are actually encouraged to, take this lore, throw it away, and come up with some of their own lore for these creatures. So, tell us about your favorite D&D creature or monster, and how you changed the lore of it. And perhaps we'll start with Jordan.
One monster that I had fun redoing somewhat was the Djinn, or the Genie, because I'm really fascinated with the real-world lore behind them. So I was doing a campaign that was very low magic, and there weren't other planes of existence. And so when the players were in, or at least adjacent to, a desert, they came upon a Djinn, but it never appeared itself. It just manifested in the form of sandstorms and illusions to try to bring people into the desert and take them away, sort of thing. And I used the lore of the real world, where they were born from smokeless fire, so if they saw fire in the presence of a Djinn in its realm, it wouldn't create smoke. And the Djinn itself was very much like real life lore, where it was attracted to war, and it kind of did guerrilla, almost trickster tactics within the area. But no one ever saw it. It's kind of like a monster movie where you never see the monster, but it was always just doing strange things that they weren't used to. It was a very low magic setting, and I enjoyed that take on it. And then another one I changed was the werewolf, where I was running Curse of Strahd, and there are werewolves involved in that, but it doesn't really say how they became werewolves, how long they'd been. But there is a kind of let's call her a greater hag that's in that module. And I thought it would be cool if former adventurers who were sick of Strahd hunting them wanted to become the hunters instead, and so they made a deal to bring riches and worship the it's been a little while, but the Night Mother, I think is what she's called, that is a common deity figure that the hags in that setting would worship. So they became kind of like hoarders, where they would go and slay people or turn them, but they would take their things and put them in a shrine to Mother Night, because they needed to appease her for their deal to not just be one of Strahd's victims. And Strahd was so amused that he chose to let them stick around. And so that was just a different take on the werewolf origin that I thought was much more interesting, and I really enjoyed that. And then lastly, this one's not really a monster from the Monster Manual, but I took the concept of an archfey and made Puck, the famous Shakespearean fairy from Midsummer Night's Dream. And I made it so Puck was instead, because I really latched onto the Feywild being kind of like how the Shadowfell is a dark reflection of the material plane, and the Feywild is something similar but bright and chaotic. So I made Puck, who was very fanciful. I based it off of the Dota 2 Puck, who was very fanciful and floats around and stuff like that, and made it so that Puck was a Grim Reaper, even though he seemed so fanciful and stuff, and he had a lot of deep, dark secrets, and the players really had to kind of figure out who he was and try to get a weapon from him that had cursed a bunch of elves. And so that was a fun switch on a fairy being like the Grim Reaper of that world, like a demigod sort of figure, just because of that mirror to our world sort of thing. So those are some of my examples that came to my mind about changing some monster lore that was fun for me and my players.
Damn, those are all really good. I like those. But I'll withhold any further comments until the end. Logan, let's move on over to you.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite monsters is the Kraken. And in the last campaign I ran, I changed it up because I was like, oh, there's like the Kraken, there's the Elder Tempest, there's all these big monsters that have like these elemental affinities, but in the world they just kind of felt like they're like these big, the Kraken's just there and destroying ships and stuff. And in mine, what I started to change it was, as the players learned about these are actually like the Kraken, the Elder Tempest. I made like an Ifrit type thing, like Final Fantasy styles, like big summon. And then the Tarask was the fourth one that I took. And I made them kind of like lesser gods of each element. But as the players learned about them, I don't know how much everyone picked up on, they weren't really from this world originally. There was a tapestry that they saw that had like these meteors coming from the sky, which is like, I'm very into the like eldritch horror-y stuff. So it's like, in my world, these creatures kind of brought life to the world that we're on, but they're from somewhere far beyond the cosmos. So I just thought for a monster, like especially the Tarask, this one that from like the first monster manual seemed like this huge presence. It doesn't really have a personality. It just kind of like goes and it's destroying stuff. And I was like, ooh, I want this force of destruction to have something behind it, something that is more than just mindless destruction. And so what the players learned through it was that, oh yeah, it's a force of destruction. It was causing earthquakes and stuff, but at the same time it was pulling like a Groudon from Pokemon and just creating like new islands and land masses behind it. It sucks that your village is there where it wants to build a new mountain, but nature does what nature does.
I loved that campaign. I was a player in that one. Red, what creations have you created?
What creations have I created? Well, I had to be frank, I don't really change a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons monster lore. I kind of generally leave it alone. Or if I don't like it and I think it sucks, then I'll go back to the original, because a lot of the monsters are taken from Greek mythology and another world mythology and legends, and so I will return to that. So that's really the only time. I don't really do that much with it. What I am very much prone to doing, which is why I always found it amusing when Wizards of the Coast felt they needed to change the alignment of all the monsters, because okay, seriously, we're going to reprint for that, is I make exceptions to the guides or the rules or the established lore. There's usually, at some point, there'll be something that the characters come across in the world that is an exception to what the standard view or nature of a particular monster or beast is. So, for example, I've told the story before, but I'll be very quick. This is like Jub the troll, who's like, losing his teeth. He's got a walker and so forth, and completely unlike any other troll they've ever met before. Or they'll come across an orc who, instead of, waylaying villages and raiding and generally getting up to a whole lot of mischief and causing problems for the humans and everybody else, because they feel like they've been slighted, because they probably have been. There's an orc that just happens to be travelling as a merchant, doing sort of mobile cookery for caravans and stuff like that. So I'll put something in there that sort of throws it out completely, and so it sort of doesn't quite sort of fit. So it's sort of, what's going on here? So I tend to make exceptions to the rules or the guides that we get. The only time I've really made something significant. And I'm kind of answering your question, Denny, but this is a good time. I will stop, pause, so you can easily cut this bit out. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm a big fan of Necrons from Warhammer 40k. And so I decided I wanted to port that into my Dungeons & Dragons game. So I decided to create an X-Files D&D game, which, much to my surprise, a lot of people showed up for, far more than I could manage. And of course, being an X-Files D&D game, it had to have alien abductions, cow mutilations, lights on the hills, and various other weird things going on, scorched earth, things like that. So I decided to port over Necrons, and the Necrons were not ported directly over from Warhammer 40k. I decided that what would happen if Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator was kind of like a Necron, and there just happened to be a whole lot more of them, and they made their way into a D&D world, and they were sort of like a whole race. So yes, I decided to push the copy button on Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, and I just made a whole bunch of those and put them into the world, and basically use that as a sort of a cyborg D&D monster. So yes, kind of cannibalized from a lot of different locations, and their purpose is really simple: experimentation, because that's what aliens do, and obviously, because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's to abduct you and convince you that you should watch all of his movies. So that's kind of what I've done with monsters that I could think of that was worthwhile talking about.
I don't see the need to cut that at all. That was very informative. I like that. And I suppose to add on to the... I suppose I better answer my question as well. As far as things I've kind of tweaked from the original like D&D sources, and I have to be careful. I had to be careful about what I chose, because Logan is one of the players in my game, and I don't want to ruin anything by giving away this new lore I've made. So I had to go with some things that he's already aware of. In my setting, and cheating a little bit, I'm going to be talking about like player races. Specifically the ASMRs, Tieflings, and Warforged, which I tweaked for the setting, and they're known as Argonfolk in our campaign. These three races are inherently tied together because they were kind of created within the setting from this like giant soul gem that was destroyed, and all these souls got let loose, and there was like a bunch of legendary items that happened to be around, and they helped create all three of these races. Based on like celestial energies, fiendish energies, and this legendary mercurial pool of metal that was nearby when all this happened. So these three became what was known as the Starborn, and now there's like a heavy like theme of like soul magic in the campaign. You know, it's like these are souls given a chance, a second chance, kind of like Devas in 4th edition, but it's celestial fiend and metal, I guess. So there's that one. A second one that Jordan reminded me about. I've also made a tweak to Archfey in my setting. Because, you know, the Archfey are kind of like, I guess, leaders and somewhat deities of the Fey in a way. I have divided them into, well, there's the classic, you know, summer courts and winter courts. That's a trope that gets played on, and I've incorporated that into the setting as well. But I've also introduced something called Knock Fey and Veil Fey, and it just added a bit of like a spooky fairy tale-ness to the kinds of Archfey you meet, and I created a little rhyme for them where the Knock Fey will knock on your door and ask to come in. The Veil Fey will sneak in through the window. So it's like these like sinister ones and the more civilized ones. And yeah, we've got players in the game that have been cursed by Veil Fey, and so that those are some of the fun things I've done to tweak some of the lore in my setting. Yeah, for anybody out there, when this becomes a YouTube video, be sure to comment below any fun tweaks that you've done to D&D monsters and creatures. We'd love to hear about it. How's about we move on to the next question?
Sure, though I do want to say that
those are... Yes, I should open this up to discussion. Guys, go ahead.
Denny, I do really like your idea of kind of further segmenting the Fae, because they are very diverse. Like, they are Fae at their heart, but making them more diverse is awesome. And Logan, I love the Groudon reference there. That's fantastic.
So I actually wanted to just say that when it comes to lore, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or any kind of monster lore, I mean, frankly, any lore and at all, but any kind of monster lore, since we're talking about monsters, I feel like it's, I mean, I've said this before, I feel like it's a starting off point. Do you know what I mean? And then once it comes to you as a dungeon master, I mean, you can use it as it is without any changes to it. That doesn't make it worth less, right? I feel like it doesn't make it less, and it doesn't diminish it in any way. But then there's also that opportunity for you to make adjustments and change it, to shake it up for the players, and also just to shake it up for yourself. Do you know what I mean? If there's anything that you ever felt that you didn't like about a particular thing, you've got that opportunity to adjust it, because you are the dungeon master. So I feel like, yeah, monster lore it's a starting point, and then you go from there.
I don't know if you guys are, I imagine you probably would be familiar with the creature. I think it's called a periton, like some heart-eating, like, weird deer bird.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's such a specific, like, lore attached to a creature. But yeah, it's, of course, like, when you look at that creature, you could throw that away, or you could play it as is. It's pretty fleshed out for you, so you know how it was made, you know why it's there, or you've got a different purpose. But yeah, I've always thought it was such a weirdly specific lore for that creature. Logan, any thoughts on anything?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm just like, anytime you can add some 40k stuff into a universe, I'm all about the Warhammer. Now I'm just kind of thinking of, I was like, ooh, how can I get some Age of Sigmar into mine?
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the opinions on changing monsters and your examples. It's hopefully everybody out there, you're inspired to do the same, or take it or leave it. That brings us to the end of this discussion on changing the lore of monsters in the Monster Manual. Be sure to check out all the YouTube channels of our guests who were present during this video. You can find their links down in the description below. And until next time, may you always play Dicely.